This is my Fujifilm GFX 50S2, and on it, I have my favorite lens for the system, the 35-70. And as much as I love this lens, sometimes I just want a smaller and a faster lens, and that's where this lens comes in. This is the Pentax SMC 50mm f2. Okay, I'm gonna try to be fast because I'm supposed to be parked where I'm actually parked, so let's make this quick, I guess. Five, 6, ISO 100 at a 1/125th of a second. Honestly, that is my favorite shutter speed, if I'm gonna be honest. This lens can be bought for anywhere from $30 to $40 on eBay and does a really good job at covering the medium format sensor. Now, it's not perfect, but for the price, I think it's more than acceptable. The equivalent field of view is about a 40mm lens on full frame. Now that I've introduced the lens, I want to quickly talk about some strengths that I think this lens has. These aren't going to be in order of what I think is most important to least important. I'm just kind of rattling them off as they come into my head. The first one I'm going to talk about is the close focus. The close focus is like 0.45, right? Yes, the close focus is 0.45 meters, and I find that shooting the lens at a meter or closer tends to mitigate some of the issues that you have when it comes to adapting a full frame lens on a medium format camera. This lens is also really small even when you include the adapter. It opens up to f2, which it's not the best at f2, but it's good in a pinch. I typically find myself shooting at f5.6, and at that aperture it does a really good job. Since it is a vintage lens, it has a lot of really unique rendering and a lot of character that it brings to a photo, and it does a good job at taking off a little bit of that digital sharpness that you get from modern digital sensors. Obviously, given its age, it's a fully manual lens with manual focus, manual aperture, and I personally don't mind this. I like having manual focus. I like having that control over my image, so if the image is out of focus, I know it's my fault and not the camera's fault. Now that I've mentioned some of the strengths I think this lens has, I want to mention some of the weaknesses that it has, and there are quite a few. The first one being the corner performance. While it does do a good job at covering the medium format sensor, it's not designed to cover a sensor that large. So in the deep corners, you do have some issues with loss of sharpness, a little bit of smearing. It does get better as you stop down the lens, but this issue never does actually go away. Similarly to the corner performance, the lens does have a little bit of vignetting. It's not like a hard, dark vignette. It's easily correctable, and like I mentioned before, if you do stop down the lens, the vignetting does get a lot better. I mentioned this earlier, but I usually shoot this lens at about f5.6, and at that aperture I don't really notice any vignetting, and if I'm being honest, I don't really have an issue with vignetting. I think it can add a really cool and unique look to my images. This lens does open up to f2, but I would really only recommend shooting at f2 if you absolutely need it. The performance is not that great. It's not that sharp wide open at f2, but I found that even stopping it down at f2.8 really cleans up the image a lot, and the lens is more than usable at f2.8, and in a pinch, shooting it wide open at f2. Now, this isn't the only version of the 50mm lens that Pentax made for the K-mount. I know there's also an f1.7 and an f1.4. I can't personally speak on those lenses. I have never tested them out. I've only used the f2. I have some Pentax K-mount lenses. I have two K1000s, and when I bought the Fujifilm GFX 50S2, the seller just included a PK to GFX mount, so I kind of got a little bit lucky being able to use this lens on this camera. And when I first mounted this lens on my GFX, I was actually really surprised and honestly kind of blown away that it performs as good as it does on the sensor. Because I also have an adapter that allows me to put some vintage Nikon F mount lenses on my GFX, and those honestly do a pretty bad job at covering. They vignette really hard, like hard dark vignettes that are just completely unusable, and so this lens does a surprisingly good job. Now, as much as I love this lens, I probably wouldn't use it for an actual photo shoot, especially if it's a paid shoot. I might use it for a test shoot, but yeah, if I'm getting paid, I'm not going to be taking this lens on an actual photo shoot. But with that being said, I think it's a really fun lens to use for more personal things, and that's pretty much what I use it for most of the time. The size and the weight of the lens make it really easy to just carry around. The GFX isn't a super heavy camera, but it's also not a small or a light camera, so being able to put this lens on this system allows me to take a really small bag out with me and go out and take photos if I want, or just throw it on my shoulder and it not really be too much of a size or a weight burden. So with all that being said, I'm 100% going to continue shooting this lens going into the future. I might actually buy another copy. This one kind of has some dust inside the actual optics, and there's a dent on the front of the lens, which means I can't mount filters or anything on it. But yeah, I'm going to continue shooting the lens. I think it's a fantastic value for this system. If you are someone who's interested, just, I would say, manage your expectations. Don't expect it to compete with the GF lens or really any modern lens for that matter. But if you just want a small and a fun lens that has really unique rendering and really cool characteristics, I would say look no further than the SMC Pentax 50mm f2. And that's where I think I'm going to start wrapping this video up. If you've made it this far, I want to say thank you for sticking with it. I hope you enjoyed the photos. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please consider leaving a like or subscribing to the channel. I will leave my Instagram on the screen as well as in the description along with my website if you want to check out any of my other work. Again, thank you so much for watching the video, and I will see you in the next one. Peace.